from the post-NFJ time. He also has a Cisco SIP phone for sale in like new condition, asking $85. And he has for sale a Motorola RDU 4160D UHF handheld with a new drop-in charger and wall wart, along with the programming cable. The software, he is told, is available from Motorola Solutions. And you can contact Mike by email. Also, he is good on QRZ. That's WB2GLW. So let me reset. And the third and final listing for this evening is from Caleb, KF8EYE in West Virginia. Caleb is a young ham with not a lot of money, so he only has about $500 maximum to spend, and he's looking for a 100-watt HF rig in good working condition for that price or less. And Caleb's email is kf8eye@gmail.com. He's also good on QRZ. And that's all for this evening. If you have anything for sale, trade, or want, just go to eastcoastreflector.com. Click on Contact ECR and SwapNet submissions, or just email me directly at ve3bz@rogers.com. And I guess I'll answer tonight's question. My answer is mostly yes, so I guess that's a yes. Not all the radios, but especially the mobile ones. All right, back to you, Dick, VE3BZ.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I did not forget to put the question in tonight, did I? And Charles is with us tonight, and he's going to have a brief discussion here on VHF, UHF, Yagi antennas. And also he's changed something, but VHF, UHF, Yagi antennas. Good evening, Charles. KC6UFM. And this is Dick, WB2JPQ.
Good evening, Dick, and everyone on the Tech Net. Many thanks to you, Dick, and Roger for herding cats tonight, and Vicki for making sure that the cats go through the gate in proper order, shall we say. As far as the question is concerned, only on mobile radios, an external speaker, because I can't wear headphones when I drive in California. Imagine that. But otherwise, because of my hearing, I almost always wear headphones when I'm at home on whatever radio I happen to be using at that moment, whether it be VHF, UHF, SHF, HF, what have you. So kind of a mixed bag there for me, yes and no. But yeah, as you mentioned, Dick, I wanted to talk a little bit about VHF, UHF, Yagis. And the reason for that is it seems like we get questions here on the Tech Net, and no small amount of questions in the Ask an Elmer, plus people just talking on the Reflector and so forth about they need to get a Yagi to where they can get into their local repeater. So the real question here is, do you actually need a Yagi? Yagis have some advantages. They're directive, so that can help you tune out a noise source like a power line or a broadcast station that is blowing in past your receiver's front end. And it also focuses the available power in a particular direction. So both those things are a benefit. Let me do a quick reset here. The other thing that these have is typically much higher gain than what you can get on an omnidirectional antenna. And it does that, it increases your effective radiated power, or your ERP, by focusing that power into a narrow band, typically aimed right at the horizon. Now, interestingly enough, there are some disadvantages to a Yagi, and they're kind of the same thing. The directivity of a Yagi dictates that you need to have a rotor. Rotors are not cheap. They are problematic sometimes, getting them to work. But you have to have one with a Yagi because every time you talk to a different station in a different direction, you have to turn that antenna to point that way. There are some exceptions with close stations able to come in on the sides or even the back of a Yagi. Usually you need to turn, and that adds expense and complexity. The other disadvantage of a Yagi is that it's high gain. The problem is that it puts that power on the horizon, which may not be a good idea for working a repeater because, in general, most repeaters are going to be higher than your location, and you'll end up shooting underneath the repeater's antenna and not getting into it. There are some cases when a Yagi is needed. Reset. The big one is if you're doing any kind of weak signal work on VHF or UHF, whether it be sideband, CW, one of the WSF, SJT modes like FT8 or FT4, and for that you probably will need to have a Yagi because most of the stations you're going to be talking to also have a Yagi. And you're dealing with very, very low signal levels, so you need all the help you can get. Another time when a Yagi comes into its own and really shines is as a point-to-point radio link. A typical example would be if you've got a repeater that's way the heck out in the boonies, and maybe it even runs on solar power, but there's no internet there, but you want to have internet access for the repeater. Well, you put up a link radio that provides that data stream to the repeater site. And for that, Yagi is absolutely perfect because you can go much further distances if you have a Yagi at both ends of that link. The thing is similarly stated, if you're ever going to communicate with just one station, maybe your brother lives 100 miles away, you could use Yagis and have a good steady link. But in that case, you're not going to be turning away, so you don't have to worry about the rotator and all that good stuff. Reset again here real quickly. Okay, for most local FM work, whether it be simplex or through local repeaters, a Yagi is probably a whole bunch of overkill. And in most cases, a simple ground plane, a quarter wave ground plane or something similar is going to actually outperform that Yagi in that environment because it's kind of aiming up a little bit more on the takeoff angle to where the repeaters are typically located. Again, in most cases, the repeater site will be above your location. Here in California, if you're down in San Diego itself, all of the repeaters are 2,000 to 3,000 to 6,000 feet higher than what you are in San Diego. So if you have something that's aiming at the horizon, you're going to be talking to the base of the mountain that antenna is on, not to the antenna itself. Better off with a ground plane or a J-pole. So, in summary, not everybody who thinks they need a Yagi really needs one. In many cases, a simple quarter-wave ground plane will outperform the Yagi in a practical, real-world situation. With that said, let's face facts. Yagis are cool. You got a whole bunch of aluminum up in the air, and it's nice and sparkly and shiny and looks impressive. And the neighbors come by and say, "What the heck is that?" And you can tell them about ham radio, but in most cases, yourself in the foot with a Yagi if you're looking for local type work. So back over to you, Dick. This is KC6 UFM, back to net control.
Well, thank you, Charles. When you mentioned links, something came to mind that I'll mention here tonight. Something that I've done over the years in a high congested RF area. On UHF links, for instance, if you go to horizontal for a point-to-point link, put your beams horizontal, you're down 20 dB from all the other garbage that are running vertical polarization. You're already down 20 dB. So you want to get rid of some of the intermod noise that might be coming in. Just run point-to-point with horizontal rather than vertical, because congested sites, you'll see most of all the two-way and all your repeaters and so forth will be vertical polarization. So just flip your Yagis horizontal and you're down 20 dB from all the other noise makers on each end of the site. Thanks, Charles. Good information. All right, let's see who we have tonight with amateur radio related questions. Who has a question for us? Once again, this is Dick, 17 past the hour, WB2JPQ. Oh, don't tell me we got to open our hymnals again. Come on.
KI7UEF, Kilo India 7, Uniform Echo Foxtrot in Redmond, Oregon.
Just looked up and saw you in Zoom, Matt, and I haven't seen you for a long time. Good evening. What do you got for us tonight? Everybody's either afraid to pick up a mic and ask a question tonight, or everybody knows all the answers. How you doing, my friend? KI7UEF.
Great to see you, Dick, as well as the rest of the crew there in the Zoom room. Thanks for the net tonight. I was wondering, I configured my star node several years ago, probably update it every now and then. I run on the Ham VoIP distro, and my question is kind of in relation to the varietals of distributions out there, and maybe this is answerable, maybe it's not, but I'm curious if anyone has any sense of what the actual adoption of distro versions are throughout the All-Star node network. For example, market share, one over the other. KI7 UEF.
Nice. Anybody like to take a stab at Matt's question? Maybe David will be along a little later. Sometimes he slides in here a little bit later on Tuesday nights.
Maybe KC4 try Kilo 4 identity Delta Mike. You want to try?
K4YDM. You got a little courtesy tone on the end, Roger beep. But go ahead. Would you like to answer Matt's question?
Yes, go ahead. What is it? What's the question? KC4YDM.
He had a question. I'm looking for responses to Matt's question. If you didn't hear it, I'll have to. I'll leave you on the list here, and I'll come back to you. Anybody like to help Matt out with the ASL3 guys and so forth and so on. If not, we'll wait. I think David might be along a little bit later here tonight.
Can you probably repeat the question? KJ4YDM.
Well, if you didn't hear the question, there's no way that you can... my question to you tonight, to everybody, do you use an external speaker on your radio? We'll let you answer that one. Do you use an external speaker on your radio? And that's to KJ4YDM in Miramar, Florida. Good evening.
Good evening. My answer to that question would be negative because I'm using a Baofeng V5R and I haven't tried to use an external speaker yet. That's it. 7-3.
All right, does not apply to that, then we'll put you down. Why don't you hang on, Matt? Maybe David will be along. I know he could really do justice to that question. Let me see what else we have. Stations with amateur radio-related questions. We started out kind of slow out of the gate tonight. What do we have? Call signs twice if you have an amateur radio-related question.
November 4, Romeo Hotel Echo. November 4, Romeo Hotel Echo.
Roger, N4RAT. Okay.
WB2JBQ, good evening, Dick. Always good to hear you. November 4, Romeo Hotel Echo. I use a 90-degree PVC elbow for my top-mounted speakers. Thank you, Charles, for your Yagi presentation. My question. I know the parts of a Yagi are the several directors, then the driven element, then the reflector to reflect the radio waves. Dick, why did you choose the name East Coast Reflector? November 4, Roger M. Enthusiast, return to Tech Net.
Well, Vicky just said because Paradise Beach was already taken, Roger. That's a good question. Well, the reflector actually came from IRLP. On All-Star, it's really not a reflector, but on IRLP back in the days, 20-some years ago, we had 9050, and that was called the East Coast, or that was a reflector. We named it the East Coast Reflector. I guess that's the best explanation that I can have. Before that, we had the Interlink system, which was my RF system in Western New York since basically 1969, 1970 was the Interlink system. Of course, that was all RF linked. There was no internet base back at that time. No Echolink, no IRLP, no All-Star, no way to link via the internet. The internet hadn't even, of course, been thought of. So I don't know, Roger. I guess it just evolved from the 9050, which was the 9050 reflector.
Thank you, Dick, for that explanation. And Paradise Beach rates only second to the 7-mile-long, beautiful Fort Lauderdale Beach. November 4, Romeo Hotel Echo, return to net.
Got to give her credit. She was pretty quick coming up with that, Roger. I guess I have to think about that. They've been after me to write up some things, how, I know we've talked about it, and asking Elmer, being Elmer, and some in town hall meetings, they've asked how the East Coast Reflector came to be. And they've been after me for years. I need to write it up, how we really got started, and how we got from 1969, 1970 to 2026. It's been a long, good ride, but there's a lot in between there, and I need to get it written up, and so maybe maybe I'll do some thinking about that, and maybe I can come up with how a better answer for you. But for right now, it's the best I can do. Thanks, Roger. Who else has got a question tonight? Amateur radio related question. Call sign twice. This is Dick, WB2JPQ.
W4FWN, W4FWN.
Wow, Dan, I was just thinking about you yesterday. We had somebody, I guess it was in the Zoom room, and somebody mentioned Stanford, and I said, where the heck is Dan been? Good evening, W4FWN. Trust you've been well?
Well, good evening, Dick, and everyone else on the net. Yes, we've been very well. No problems. Been mostly on the low bands, and was having some problem with digital, and don't know whether we got it all resolved or not, but seemingly we're back on the air. My question is on HF, on a vertical antenna, if I'm going to use the coax as the counterpoise and not something else, is it a good idea to have that at a wavelength? Say I'm on 20 meters, something like 33 feet or something like that, or is that not a good idea? I guess that's a question for our antenna guy. Back to net, this is W4FWN.
Yep, that certainly is a question for Charles. Go right ahead, Charles.
Thank you, Dick. Dan, let me preface all this by saying that I would recommend against doing that. The chances of getting RF back into the shack are just huge. And basically, all you're going to save is about $20 for a little bit of wire. But in general, with a vertical antenna, you want the base of that antenna to be as close as possible to the ground itself. Certainly no more than a foot or maybe a foot and a half. And then if you take your counterpoise wires and you either lay them right on top of the dirt or preferably dig it down maybe 2 or 3 inches and lay them in a little trench below the ground level. That's mostly to avoid running over them with the lawnmower or catching them in a weed eater. Neither one is a pretty scenario, and been there, done that. But if you put them either right on top of the ground or just slightly below the ground, you do not need to cut them to any sort of resonance. I would have several different lengths, just to where you've got a little bit better coverage on that counterpoise, and don't bury them more than about 4 to 6 inches. Keep them preferably less than 4 inches deep, and that will take care of that problem for you. You can then put a common mode choke right at the feed point, and that will keep the RF out of your shack. Now, if you're going to do it with the coax, again, if the coax is laying right on the ground or slightly buried, which there is some suitable for direct burial, then you don't need to worry about how long it is. If it's more than a foot and a half or 2 feet above the ground, you will need to cut the coax to resonance for each band that you're going to work on. That's why wires generally work better, Dan. Back over to you, Dick. KC6UFM, back to net control.
Well, thank you, Charles. Dan, did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Charles. Yeah, I understood that. I wasn't thinking about RF coming back into the shack. I wouldn't give it a thought. And the choke, and you answered my question exactly right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'll answer the question. I use speakers, but I do use earphones on they count as speakers or not. The net control. This is W4FWN. Thanks a lot, Dick.
Thanks, Dan. Good to hear you again. And thanks, Charles, as always. All right, who else do we have? Stations with amateur radio-related questions.
November 8th, Quebec, Yankee, Quebec. November 8th, Quebec, Yankee, Quebec.
Well, that's Jay from Detroit, Michigan, N8QYQ. Good evening, Jay. You got a question, and you can answer ours. Do you use an external speaker on your radios or radio? Good evening.
Well, on my base radio at home, I've got a couple radios, and I run them through a 4-channel stereo or mixer to a set of studio speakers, and that was a new project here in the last month. And so, as of now, yes, I do use a set of external speakers. Here in the car, no. But yes, definitely at the home PCA.
Down for yes, and go ahead with your question to us tonight.
So over the holidays, was lucky enough to have some extended vacation time and started to explore a variety of new parts of the hobby, and in particular started to explore APRS. And I'm learning something every day, but I am frustrated by really understanding how to best configure my mobile radio for APRS. And so I don't expect to deep dive a radio configuration on the net this evening, but I thought I would ask if there happened to be, by chance, anybody on frequency that has experience, preferably with a Yaesu FTM 500, and configuring it for APRS, if they would be open to me connecting with them offline, if they're on QRZ and I can email them, and we could exchange some notes about configuration, etc., I would be greatly appreciative. So again, I use a Yaesu FTM 500, and I'm working to configure that for APRS.
Well, it sounds like a fair request. Let's see if anybody can help you out. Anybody help Jay from Detroit out with an FTM 500 to configure for APRS offline?
6 CWI comment.
Yeah. Good evening, Ruben. Jay's looking for somebody that has the, I'm sure you heard, FTM 500, and like to learn how to configure APRS on that radio, and probably through email or maybe one of the breakout rooms in Zoom here or whatever, call or whatever. Can you help them out?
Good evening, Dick, and thank you for doing the net. A pleasure to be here. Yes, I will. Can I have the call sign of the gentleman, and does he have an email on his QRZ? I'll send him an email and give him my phone number.
Right, it's N8QYQ. N8QYQ. It's Jay, and he does, I'm looking at it now, he does have a current email address on his website, Ruben. Thank you for helping him out.
Okay, So that's Jay from Detroit, Michigan, and it's a Gmail. I'll send it to him right away, and we'll make it work, Dick. Thank you very much again for letting me chime in, and have a prosperous and healthy new year to you and your family and every one of your friends. Likewise to everyone listening to 73 KD6 CWI.
Well, same to you, Ruben. Thank you for helping Jay out. So, Jay, I guess look for an email from KD6 CWI in California. Jay, will that work?
That'll absolutely work, and even beyond expectations. You know, you hope to be able to key up and ask a question and get some answers back, but even better to get an Elmer who's been there, done that before. So thanks so much. I appreciate it. Back to Net Control, NHQIQ.
There you go. It's always my philosophy. Don't reinvent the wheel, right? Thanks, Jay. Thank you, Ruben. Right, who else do we have tonight? 36 past the hour. Call signs twice if you have an amateur radio-related question you would like to ask tonight. This is Dick, WB2JPQ.
WA3LXD.
WA3LXD. David. Good evening to you, David.
Evening. I have an antenna question tonight. On a random wire antenna fed with a 9-to-1, there are various lengths that will give you band coverage or frequency coverage on different bands. Does anybody know of a technique on how to tune, this thing in? Seems to be kind of a hit and miss. I mean, a dipole is pretty simple. You know what percentage you're off frequency and cut that percentage off the wire length and you're in business. But these random wire antennas, it's kind of tough to get your arms around. So I was wondering if anybody had any techniques or tricks. And back to Net Control.
Well, I got just the guy for this one, David. Charles will answer this in a heartbeat. Random wire antenna, Charles.
Thank you, Dick. David, keep in mind that a random wire antenna is nowhere close to being random. The lengths are extremely specific and well-defined, and that is to prevent any harmonics on any of the operating frequencies of choice. So as far as tuning a random wire, if you will, but it's actually a long wire, but as far as tuning is concerned, basically you don't. You use the recommended length or the calculated length, and there is a Python program out there called EndFed. That's ENDFED.py, and that will calculate the length of the wire that you can use based upon the bands that you're interested in. A very handy program to use, but for a long wire antenna, you cut it to that specific length that fits with your installation, and then you let your antenna tuner, again a misnomer, but you let your antenna tuner take care of getting the match. Typically you will use a 9-to-1 transformer because most of them are up around 400 to 500 ohms of input impedance. So just let your tuner do what it's being paid to do, and because you're not going to get a match on more than one or two bands that is not going to need a tuner. And typically it's also going to need an external tuner. Most internal tuners, modern radios, can't handle the mismatch. But basically, cut it to length as calculated, get it in the air, put the 9-to-1 on the end of it, coax into the shack, and you're good to go. Just let your tuner take care of the details. Back over to you, Dick. KC6, UFM, back to net control.
Charles, once again, David, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Charles. That was very, very informative. So, yep, I get the message. Set it and forget it. Thank you so much. WA3LXD, back to net control.
David. And Charles, that's what I've been going to do. I've been going to try to do research. Where did we go from Matchbox, which it was back in when I started in ham radio, to antenna tuner? How did that name get changed? That'd be a good Google question to research. How did we get from like the Johnson Matchbox days to antenna tuner today? We're always Matchboxes. What else do I have? Amateur radio related questions. Call signs twice.
K2AP.
Hello, Joe. K2AP. Good evening.
Yeah, I just had a simple question. When I'm on the East Coast Reflector website, when I want to listen to the logging program, I go to the point where it says login for, read the log in real time for whatever net happens to be going on. It runs for a little while, and it just says error loading document. I've tried it on various computers, on a tablet, and also on my phone. Am I doing something wrong?
Talking about the fetch log, you go to, which is what you said, you go to the website, go to Nets, and follow along on the log or whatever the box says. Click that. First report we've had, we have many people on the morning go along, and I have never heard of that. I'm sure periodically somebody might have to refresh, but I'm not aware of any problems, Joe.
Yeah, no, I didn't think it was a problem on your side. I thought I was doing something wrong. Like I said, every single one on the bottom of the screen, it says loading document for quite a while, and then it says document load failed, and that's it. I've only seen the log work once, and I thought maybe the usual things like possibly a firewall on my side or some porters being blocked or whatever. I just thought maybe it was a common thing, and I'm just doing something wrong. Back to you, Dick, from K2AP.
What browser are you using? Have you tried a different browser, Joe?
Yeah, I tried Chrome, Firefox, the whatever browser comes with Android, which I believe is Chrome. Every single one does the exact same thing. One time it did work. It looks like it's loading an Excel spreadsheet that's getting probably refreshed by some kind of a database, maybe a SQL Server database or something. I'm not sure how, what the mechanics behind it. But it only worked once, and all the time. It'd be kind of interesting to watch the log during a net. But I just thought maybe there's something that I'm doing wrong. K2AP, back to net.
Sound like Yowie. What was that, Vicky? Yeah, I was just talking to Vicky there. She said, no, we can't help you, Joe. Obviously, it's on your end. There's a group, there's a bunch on, following along right now. First time we've heard of that, so I don't know what to tell you. Different browser. I guess you've already tried it, but I'm not sure. Not sure what's going on, Joey. I guess we can't help you there. If we hear of anything, we'll let you know, but I don't know what else to tell you. You're going in through the website. We have a shortcut, but it's still going to take you to the same place, so I guess we can't help you.
Yeah, well, thank you anyway. I'm sure it's got to be some kind of, it's acting like a firewall type of thing. So that's one thing I didn't try. I'll try shutting the firewall off and running it. Maybe it's something like that. Okay, well, thank you anyway for taking the time to try to figure it out. 73 and all the best. K283 back to net.
Let us know, Joe, how you make out next week, and send us a note, just in case it is that. And if we come across that problem with somebody else, we'll be able to tell them that you resolved it with the firewall. But that's something that we have had zero complaints on. That I'm not aware of any complaints in all the years we've had that. So sorry about that, Joe. What else do we have? Stations with amateur radio call signs twice. 47 past the hour. This is Dick, WB2JPQ. Just looking here, we had 54 new users last week that crossed the threshold here that we recorded, and 31 of them had email addresses. So again, I want to remind everybody, especially to the new amateurs, just got your license, go to QRZ.com, make sure that you have a current email address and a public email address on your QRZ.com page, especially to the node owners. See, every once in a while, more than every once in a while, we run into people. We need to get a hold of them. Their node is acting up, and we want to send them an email, and we find that they don't have a current email address. We have no way to get a hold. So just a little reminder to everybody. All right, last call for stations with amateur radio-related questions, and if we don't have any questions, I'll send it over to Roger for general check-ins.
This is 9Y4DX, 9 Yankee 4, Delta X-ray Bertrand.
Bertrand, I do get a chance to talk to you tonight, 9Y4DX. Trinidad and Tobago, good evening. We'll take your question, my friend.
Well, a pleasant evening to you, Dick. WB2JPQ, this is 9Y4DX Bertrand, and my location, yes, Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. Well, Dick, I have a little issue here. I bought a radio when I traveled last year to the States. I bought here a ES2 dual band submersible transceiver VX-6R. And when I returned, I think it was my error not to test it up there. But when I returned home and I mounted up the radio, I am not getting to transmit. It's not transmitting. And more than that, I hold on to the antenna. The receiver is clearer and louder. What could possibly be the problem there with my radio? Over.
Well, I don't like what you said. When you hold on to the antenna, you can hear with it. that indicates a bad antenna, Bertrand. My guess would be shorted coax, bad antenna. What kind of an antenna? Do you have, first of all, let's back up a minute. Do you have a dummy load? Can you test it into a dummy load, or are you always testing it into that antenna that might be faulted?
Well, what is happening here is that it's a rubber ducky antenna. It's in 3 parts, or 2 or 3 parts here. It's a screw-in antenna. So I do not have a shoe for that antenna otherwise. It is not like the bayonet antenna or so. So that I'm having a little issue with getting it to transmit. That is my problem. Over.
An HT. I didn't hear the model number. You did a little fade. I thought it was a multi-belt transceiver, UHF, VHF. Well, I tell you, I still see what Charles thinks, but I still lean toward the antenna. I really do. Do you have another antenna, or do you have an adapter that you could put in to put it into a dummy load or anything like that? You know, I'm thinking it's not transmitting; it's shutting down with a high vis wire. And when you touch the antenna, it's receiving. Better, you said. It sounds to me like a bad antenna or something in that antenna circuit to me.
KC6UFM.
What do you think, Charles? Go ahead.
Thank you, Dick. Yeah, Bertrand, I do not have the VX6, but I've got about half a dozen VX5s, and they're very, very similar radios. And I have had issues with 2 of them where the internal to the radio, where the coax that goes from the antenna socket to the board has had a bad solder joint on it and has either cracked and came loose, or something along that nature. And I had the same thing happening with one of these, and it threw me off for a while because how would grabbing hold of the antenna fix a broken wire inside the radio? And it was, because every time I'd grab the antenna, put just enough torque on that connector that it would start making contact. So you might need to open it up and look in there. But on the other hand, if you bought it new before you came up here to the States, when was that, late last year sometime, I can't recall now, but is it still under warranty that you could perhaps send it back to Yaesu and let them fix it for you? Back over to you, KC6UFM.
A good point. Let's find out. Yeah, boy, I remember where the HTs used to have the B and C connectors on it. That used to be pretty common because you would you'd crank that B and C tight, and the base would turn just enough to break off the coax. I remember back in the day fixing many of those pieces of coax inside. Bertrand, like Charles said, is it a new radio? Can you send it back to the manufacturer?
WB2 JPQ and Charles, this is 9Y4DX returning. Yes, it's a brand new radio. When I say brand new, I bought it while I traveled last year, September. It arrived the day before I had to travel back to Trinidad, so I did not get the opportunity to test it. It should be under warranty. I think it's under warranty, so I'm going to check the receipt. I bought it through Walmart. So I'm going to check my receipt and find out what I can do if I can return it to the States, because I stayed at my sister's place there in New Jersey. So would you suggest that I do that? Over.
would suggest, I think that's where Charles was leaning too, that you send it back. You know, being a brand new radio, if it wasn't new, I would suggest taking it apart, and once you get the back off or get it apart, you'll be able to see that right away. You'll be able to take an ohm meter and go from the center, check continuity. But I wouldn't take a brand new radio part if you could send it back. So I guess we're saying, why don't you send it back, see what happens? At least make an attempt to send it back, see what they say.
Okay. I think that would be a good suggestion. I wasn't thinking of sending it back. I was still hoping to try to press it and check it. But every time I hold the antenna, I am receiving very well, and I'm not transmitting at all whether I hold the antenna on. So let me pursue that action, Dick, and probably I'll get back on to you as to what is the outcome of it. Thank you very much for your suggestion. Thank you, Charles, as well. Back to you. WP2 JPQ, this is 9Y40.
Richard, yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do. Like Charles said, something going on there. I'll bet you it's they have miniature coax from those. Some are mounted right onto the board. That's another. Some are mounted. The connectors mounted right to the top of the board. It probably is an easy fix. It is. You just need to resolder it, or some of them have a short little piece of coax in there. Most of them, I think, are mounted onto the board. So I would suggest sending it back or see what they say. Send them an email and tell them your dilemma and see what they say. Thanks, Richard. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but if you want to take it apart and maybe void the warranty, you don't have a choice. All right, it's 58 past the hour. I'm going to send it over to Roger. He's been sitting here in the green room, ready to go. Vicky's going to pop up our first 10 text check-ins. And Roger will take the first 10 text check-ins. Why do I have trouble saying 10 text check-ins? It's a tongue twister for me every week. So it's all yours, Roger. Good evening, everybody. Have a good night. This is Dick, WB2JPQ.
Thank you, Dick, and Vicky on the logging, KKY, and this is Roger, KO4QMM in Central Florida. I'll be your net controller for the rest of the evening, and we got some text check-ins here. I should be able to get through them pretty quick, and then we'll take some general check-ins along with the mobiles and whatnot. So let me jump at the bottom here. W2RBC, Randy, team member, West Seneca, New York. N5RTC, Terry, Austin, Texas. K7FPS, Fred, Reno, Nevada. K8 BYU, Roy, Blaisdell, New York. W2EM, Chuck, Lancaster, New York, which is down in Florida right now. Getting out of the snow there, Chuck. K9 KDA, Damon, Portland, Oregon. And K6AAN, Mike, Valley Springs, California. WA2 Joel, Buffalo, New York. KK4SED, Les, Claremont, Florida. And top of the line, KD2JPP, Bob, Gallatin, Tennessee. Good evening, Bob. Use an external speaker on radios. Over.
Hey, good evening, Roger, Vicky, and Dick, and everybody else on the net. I do use external speakers on my radios. I use a speaker from Kenwood that I like the sound of. And hope everybody stays safe, has a great week, and we'll send it right back to Net Control.
Thanks for joining us this evening, Bob. And I do too. If I'm not using my headphones, I have a Bluetooth speaker that plugs right in, and man, they sound pretty good. Thanks for joining us. Let's move on to Les Claremont. Before SED, good evening, Les.
49 degrees here in Claremont. Let's see, question 8. Yeah, do you use external speakers? Yes, I do. I got them set up here. I've got 2 external speakers here. If there is any emergency or prior traffic, SED back to net.
Well, we got you down for a yes there, Les, and you're a couple degrees warmer than me up here. We're at 46. So there you have that. Let's move on to Joel, Buffalo, New York. WA2UUS, good evening, Joel. Do you use an external speaker on your radios? Over.
Okay, nothing heard. This is KI0AR net control for the Colorado Astronomy Net.
And in my car, my mobile unit, and it works pretty well. I wish everyone a nice week ahead. Be safe and be well. And thank you, Roger and Vicki.
I think we missed a little bit of your answer there. We had a double from Colorado there. Go back with your answer there, Joel.
Yes, I do use an external speaker in my mobile unit. I have an FC8000 for VHF and UHF there, and it works well. I wish everyone a nice week ahead. Be well and be safe. And thank you, Roger and Vicki.
And thank you, Joel. We got you nice and clear, and thanks for joining us. Let's move on to Mike, Valley Springs, California, K6AAN. Good evening, Mike.
Well, good evening, Roger, and everybody on the net. As far as external speakers on the radios go, most definitely, especially my base station radios. 2HF radios and UHF, VHF mobile, they've all got externals. I got some really messed up hearing. Those have been a really big help. We'll hand it back to you, and thank you for running the net tonight, Roger. 7-3, this is K6AAN.
Yeah, it kind of made me think there it's not really a young man's hobby, so maybe that's why we're seeing all these yeses. Have a great day there, Mike. Thanks for joining us. Let's talk to Damon. Portland, Oregon, K9KDA. Good evening. I saw a little flicker on the repeater there. Are you there? K9KDA. All right, a drive-by. First one of this evening. Let's move on to my buddy Chuck, and he's down South Florida here, hiding from all that snow. W2EM. Good evening, Chuck.
Good evening, Roger, Vicki, Dick, and the rest of the group here. I have my main HF radio. I have a Heil parametric system with a speaker. It works out really nice. And the other radios in the shack, I have separate speakers for each one. I think some of them are like the Motorola ones you can pick up at Amfest like for $5. They work pretty good. I think I have one of those in my car also for my mobile. So yeah, I do use it. So 73. Everybody have a good week. W2EM.
You
too, Chuck. Have a great evening, and thanks for joining us. Let's move on to Roy, Blaisdell, New York, K8BYU. Good evening, Roy.
Everybody on the net, KA8BYU. Yeah, I've used external speakers on the radio in the car and for quite a few years. And I use one every day on the VHF, UHF rig here at the house because it's got a bottom-mounted speaker, and that's just not good anymore. So I always have an external speaker plugged into that radio. Fortunately, the HF rig has a front-facing speaker, so I use that or the headset. Back to you.
Yeah, a lot of these radios have a limited amount of space, so I think they count on people using headsets and extra speakers that they can sell. And thanks for joining us. Let's move on to Fred, Reno, Nevada, K7FPS. Good evening, Fred. Do you use an external speaker on your radios? Over.
Wouldn't you know, my node wanted to ID at that exact moment. K7FPS, Fred in Reno. Good evening, Roger, Vicki, and Dick, and thank you all. Yes, I do. I have an Anytone 578, and I got an grab-and-go kind of thing from PowerWorks that puts the power supply right above the radio, above the speaker. And yes, short answer, yes. K7FPS, back to net.
It was kind of funny, Fred, because I was happy as soon as I let off the PTT switch, my radio ID'd, and yeah, sometimes it goes good for you, and other times you gotta wait. So that's why I always give the person time to answer. It's always IDing at the wrong time. Thanks for joining us, Fred. Let's move on to my buddy Terry, Austin, Texas, N5RTC. Good evening, Terry.
Good evening, Roger. Thank you, Vicki, for logging tonight. I have mostly handhelds, so I don't need an external speaker with those. I do have two Raspberry Pi-based nodes that I have to use an external headset with. I don't know whether that counts as an external speaker or not, but that's my answer. This is N5RTC. Back to net control. Keep up the good work, Roger.
Thank you, Terry. And it looks like Vicki came up with an answer there for you. Let's move on to the last one here on the text check-ins. Randy, West Seneca, New York, W2RBC. Also my partner on the 20-minute net. Good evening, Randy.
Good evening, Roger, Dick, Vicki, everyone on the Tech Net. Yes, I do. All my radios that are used as base units have an external speaker. I also use a headset for HF SSB. Back to net control, 73 to all, W2 RBC.
For joining us, Randy. You stay warm up there and all that snow you guys are getting. That's it for the text check-ins. Now we'll move on to the general check-ins. All are welcome to join in this evening. This is the East Coast Reflector Tuesday Night Tech Net. And our question is, do you use an external speaker on your radio? Do Vicki a favor and try to spread it out, and do your call sign twice and slow.
Zulu Sierra 2 Echo Charlie. Zulu Sierra 2 Echo Charlie.
KR4COH, Kilo Romeo 4, Charlie Oscar Hotel. Just checking in. Top of the evening to the net. In and out.
For ECR
ZVN.
Romeo 4
and 2 ZVN.
Mike in Tampa, Florida.
W2PMS. W2PMS.
Kilo Charlie 3, Foxtrot Golf Delta. Kilo Charlie 3, Foxtrot Golf Delta.
All right, we'll go with this list. This is KO4QMM, Roger in Central Florida. And we'll start with W2KJV, Tony, one of our team members here at the ECR, Homosassa, Florida. KC3FGD, Ray, Elizabethtown, PA. W2PMS, Peter, Cortland, New York. KW4WTF, Mike, Tampa, Florida. N2ZVN, Howland, Kendall, New York. KR4ECS, Mike, Durham, New York. KR4CH, In and Out, Hector, Jacksonville, North Carolina. Take it easy there, Hector. Have a good evening. And top of the list, Tom from Port Elizabeth, South Africa, ZS2EC. Good evening, Tom. And do you use an external speaker on your radios? Over.
Good evening, everybody. Good morning from my side. 12 minutes past 4. 66.2 Fahrenheit. Yes, I do, Roger, on my HF and on my VHF radio. Back to you, Roger.
Always sound good, Tom, and you have a great morning or something there, I'm sure, close. And we already said Hector. Move on to Mike, Durham, New York, Carolina. KR4ECS. Good evening, Mike.
Roger, KR4ECS here. I do not have any external speakers. On my base unit, I use headphones. I'm using them right now, and on my need an external. Relatively new to amateur radio, so maybe I'll get there eventually, but no externals at this point. Back to net.
And you probably still got some good here, Mike. Thanks for joining us this evening. Let's move on to Alan, Kendall, New York. N2ZVN. Good evening, Alan.
Good evening, Roger. On the net. No, I don't use one. I use a headset for HF, but aside from that, no external speaker. Everyone have a good night. 7-3 and 2 ZVN.
You have a good evening too, Alan. Thanks for joining us. Let's move on to Mike, Tampa, Florida, KW4WTF. Good evening, Mike. Do you use an external speaker on your radios? Over.
Whiskey 4, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, Mike in Tampa, Florida. Here on this balmy 53-degree evening. Yes, I do use a external speaker on my rig here, and it's only because it just sounds that much more clear. So the answer is yes. Nothing else for the Neds. $73. Hope everyone's having a good night. Thank you for hosting tonight. KW4 WTF, back to net control.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening, Mike, and have a great evening. Let's move on to Peter, Cortland, New York. W2PMS. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, everybody. I haven't checked into the Tech Net in quite some time, so hope everybody's having a good evening. Well, I don't drive, so I generally, if I'm going to have a radio, it's sitting on a desk at home, so sometimes I will plug in an external speaker if I have one, and usually I do. Right now, I'm using an external speaker because it's mandatory. I'm using a brand new radioless node that I just received today, and really liking how simple it is and just how much more sense it makes if I'm just sitting here at home and don't need to have radios tied up. So I guess the general answer is yes. Everybody have a good evening. W2PMS back to net.
QSL Peter, thanks for joining us this evening, and have a great evening. Let's move on to everybody's favorite Ray, Elizabethtown, PA, KC3FDD. Good evening, Ray.
Well, good evening, Roger. Hey, no garden activity going for a while. Negative to your question, Roger. I never used one. Hey, everyone, have a great evening. KC3FGD, back to net.
Thank you, Ray. Coming in a little bit hot there tonight, but we can accept it. Yeah. Let's move on to Tony, Homosassa, Florida, W2KJV, one of our team members here. Good evening, Tony, and do you have an external speaker on your radios?
Good evening, Roger, Vicky, everyone on the Tech Net tonight. Yes, I do have a radio or two that I use an external speaker on, and there's a few I don't, but for the most part, yes. Hope everyone has a great day, great evening, and back to you, Rogers, W2KJV.
QSL, Tony, thank you for joining us this evening, and let's move on to the text check-in. See, Dick, you're not the only one with that problem there. Text check-ins, I got 4 of them here. I'll rip through those, and then we'll add to it with some general check-ins, in and outs, mobile, whatever you got. So let me grab David N6QDY, Sacramento, California. K5RLR, Randall, Spring, Texas. N7WZI, Allen, Lubbock, Texas, but I do believe he's in Oregon now. KI5PMI, Bill, Hobbs, New Mexico, and Andy, Cheektowaga, New York, W2AJR. Anybody else would like to join in, come with your call sign twice and slow.
November Whiskey 2, Charlie, Julia, Mike, in and out.
Kilo November 6, Golf, Sierra Golf. Kilo November 6, Golf, Sierra Golf.
November 3, Tango, Juliet, Kilo, and 3, TJK, in and out.
This is 9 Yankee 4 Delta X-ray. 9Y4 DX Bertrand, Trinidad and Tobago, in and out.
K4 Fox X-ray Charlie, K4FXC.
AC4BR, Alpha Charlie 4 Bravo Romeo.
All right, grab a hold of it right there. I'm almost at the bottom of my log area here. So let's start with AC4BR, Brian, Monticello, Kentucky. K4FXC, David, Wilmington, North Carolina. My buddy Bertrand, 9Y4DX, in and out. Have a great evening, Bertrand. Good hearing from you. Tim, 3TJK, in and out. Thanks for hearing you. Pasadena, Maryland. And KN6GSG, Barry, Moss Beach, California. N3MDC, Michael, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. W2CGM, in and out. Charles, Sells, New York. Good evening. Have a great evening. And then the rest I already mentioned. Let's go to the top of the list. Andy, Cheektowaga, New York. W2AJR. This is KO4QMM. Good evening, Andy.
On the net. Yeah, I think the speakers on most radios are their weakest link, so I definitely use external speakers on just about everything I have. 7-3, everybody. Have a great week.
You have a great evening too there, Andy. And let's move on to Bill, Hobbs, New Mexico. KI5PMI. Good evening, Bill. And do you use an external radio or external speaker on your radios?
Good evening, Roger, everybody on the net. No, I do not yet. I've got a little ICOM 7100, and the speaker on the little control unit deal is pretty good, so haven't really had the need for it yet, but it's something I have been looking at, so maybe in the future. But right now, no. Hope everybody has a good night. KI5PMI, back to net.
One thing it's nice to get out of them speakers is they get a little extra bass tone, you know. The factory ones just have no bass to them at all. But thanks for joining us, Bill. You have a wonderful evening. Let's move on to my buddy Alan there in Oregon right now. N7WZI. Good evening, Alan.
If I run one in the house, I'll use an external speaker, but in mobile, have one of those little trays that kind of amplifies it. So, yeah, it definitely makes a difference when you're doing it as a base station. So, yeah, you have a good one. And I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Right on. See, at least my memory still works. And like Roger from down in Fort Lauderdale, he gave me the idea using the old 3-inch elbow. And I got it on my Kenwood radio right now pointed at me, and it really works well. Thanks for joining us, Alan, and thank you, Roger. Let's move on to Randall, Spring, Texas, K5LR. Good evening, Randall.
Well, good evening to you, sir. K5RLR. I would have to say yes. I do on the radios in my car. Not so much mobile radios, not so much handheld, but definitely the ones in my car. Hope everybody has a good evening. 7-3-12, and we'll see everybody here tomorrow in the morning. Thanks for running that, Roger. We do appreciate it. K5RLR. Back to you, sir.
You got it, my friend. And yes, everybody's favorite, the Morning Brew on this frequency every morning, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And always got some kind of scientific question going on that you can answer. Let's move on to my buddy David, Sacramento, California, N6QDY. Good evening, David.
Hey, good evening there, Roger, Vicky, Dick, everybody on the net, and everybody in the Zoom control room, N6QDY. Doing a great job. Boy, I'm loving those videos, though. Keep that up. Keep up the good work on that, too. Yeah, put me down for a yes, Roger. Put me down for a yes. Back to net control. Have a good evening. N6QDY.
You have a great evening. Thanks for always joining us. Let's move on to Matt, Redmond, Oregon, KI7UEF. Good evening, Matt. Do you use an external speaker on your radios?
I typically do not utilize an external speaker. I don't have any, but I did see on of interest note one of the coolest radioless all-star nodes that I've ever seen built was Raspberry Pi put inside of a older Yamaha sidecar HF rig speaker, you know, the inside ones, and then they just tapped the internet and a microphone. It was really neat. I didn't realize that the text line checked me in. I was trying to ask a question there. It said unknown command, so I guess I checked in there, and I'm in turn here. I did want to comment on the station. I wish you could tell me, I hope you can, the station who had that new radioless node that they checked in on. I thought they sounded just fantastic, and I'd love to know what type of radioless node they're running. If you can share their call sign, I might try to email them. Thank you so much. KI7UEF, back to net control.
We'll check into that best we can, my friend. Thanks for joining us, and let's move on to Scott, Jamestown, New York, N7FGP. Scott, good evening, and do you use an external speaker on your radios?
Good evening, Roger, Vicki, and Dick, and everybody out there tonight. You know, yeah, I use external speaker wherever I can. Usually, if I'm got my portable, I've got a earpiece in or a Bluetooth, depending on the radio. But pretty much always have some sort of external device to help me hear. Too many years of sirens, I guess. Thanks for doing the net. Back to you.
Thanks for joining us this evening, and let's move on to Michael, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, N3MDC. Good evening, Michael.
Good evening, Roger. Roger, it's good to hear Bertrand out there. Bertrand out there in Trinidad and Tobago. I know Bertrand. He checked into my net back in 2022, so it's good to hear Bertrand out there. So it's good to hear him. I haven't heard him in years, so good to hear him on the net tonight. Yes, I do, Roger. I actually on my two handhelds. I run them in my mom's car. I run handhelds. I use earpieces. I use one for my ham radio and my CB because I want to be able to hear the check-ins on my radio and the truckers in my ear on my CB. So that way my mom doesn't have to listen to them when she wants to listen to her music. So I use earpieces in both my ham radio and my CB in my mom's car. So that's you, Roger, N3MDC.
You got it, Michael. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, Bertrand's always doing that, traveling and waiting to see him at Hamcation one of these years. You hear that, Bertrand? Have a good evening there. Let's move on to Moss Beach, Barry, KN6GSG. Good evening, Barry.
Good evening, Roger.
Was that you trying to come in CW, Barry? KN6GSG.
No, that wasn't me. This is Barry, KN6GSG. This is Barry, KN6GSG. That wasn't me on CW. That was someone else. Good evening, Roger and Vicki. On my 5 radios, 3 of them have external speakers and 2 of them have PVC 90s that work just great. So thank you for being here. Thanks for letting me check in. This is KN6GSG. Back to net.
You got it, Barry. Yeah, I thought you were coming in CW there, and You know, I'm pretty good at CW, and it was saying, yes, I do have an external speaker. That's what I got out of it. So thanks again. Either way, I got the answer. Let's move on to David, Wilmington, North Carolina, K4FXC. Good evening, David, one of our team members.
Yeah, good evening, all. It's K4FXC. And I almost always use an external speaker with something where it's a voice mode, either FM or sideband or something like that. And I, in general, pretty much make all my own these days using Powell 5 or 6 inch mid-ranges, which are quite cost-effective and give excellent audio quality in general for the price. So that's and they also allow plenty of drive power. So if you put a 20 watt amp or something behind it to hear it in a loud room, you can hear it just fine. And yep, so it's and I use it on all I'm on a radioless node right now, and I use it on all the radioless nodes as well. K4FXC, back to net.
We got you, David. Thanks for joining us this evening. And Brian, Stella, Kentucky, AC4BR. Good evening, Brian. Do you use an external speaker on radios?
Hello, Roger. Vicky and everybody on the net. Let me turn this other radio down a second. I do in the vehicles currently. I haven't, well, I've got a cheap one I've got that I can use on base stations if I can ever get my base station stuff set up. But, yeah, actually, if people, other people are interested, Ham Radio Crash Course on advertised a headrest speaker mount a year ago or something, and I got it intrigued. And after I got my gaze up FDM 500 put in the vehicle and got under the seat, well, I noticed I couldn't hear it nearly as well, even with that just, front speaker. So I got that and hooked up an external speaker, which actually came with the mount. It's for some reason you can't find it on Lido's website. You have to search for like headrest and it'll pop up. But anyway, that's been a blessing because that makes a huge difference. But anyway, so yeah, that's my story. So I'll turn it back to you, Roger. Everybody have a good evening. AC4BR.
Well, it's a good story, Brian, and thanks for sharing it with us this evening. This is KO4QMM Roger in Central Florida. You're listening to the East Coast Reflector Tuesday Night Tech Net. If you haven't heard of that before, go check out eastcoastreflector.com. You'll see what we're all about. A lot of ham radio fun. And bottom of the list before we take some more, Leo, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, K4ITA. Good evening, Leo.
Good evening. Good evening, Roger, Vicky, Dick, everybody. And yes, I do have an external speaker. It's a Tivoli radio. It's not the Icom Yeso, nothing like that. It's a very good old 15-year-old Tivoli radio, wooden case. It's an amazing sound. Okay? I hope to talk to you on Thursday on the 20-meter net. Everybody, great net, K4ITA.
Oh, I hope so, my friend. Last Thursday was kind of rough with propagation and people all beside us, but we finally got in there and got like 18 contacts. So thanks for that. We always look forward to the 20-meter net. That's Thursday morning, 10 o'clock, 14.317, give or take a kilohertz. All right. As I said, this is Roger, KO4QMM. What do you say, Vicky? See if we can get a few more in. General check-ins, in and out. Come with your call sign. Twice and slow.
N2BH. N2BH. AA4XM.
3 VPK. KB3 VPK.
Kilo Echo 4, Delta Echo Romeo. Kilo Echo 4, Delta Echo Romeo.
Kilo 6 Golf Bravo Zulu, K6 GBZ, in and out.
Kilo Foxtrot 4, Zulu Lima Golf, check me in and out.
Kilo Juliet 7, Romeo Victor Bravo, good evening.
Alpha Kilo 6, Charlie, AK.
KEHJXL, KEHJXL.
Alright, nice list there. Let's start from the bottom. We got Jason, Perry, Michigan, I do believe that is. KE8JXL. We got Ed, Hollandale, Florida, AK6CF. KJ7RVB Ray, Cody, Wyoming. KF4ZLG Dennis, New Bern, North Carolina, in and out. Thanks for stopping by, Dennis. K6GBZ Tom, Cameron Park, California. Thanks for stopping in, Tom. And we got Bill, Fayetteville, North Carolina, K4T. We'll be back to you. Mary, Easton, PA, KB3VPK. Micah, Florence, Alabama, AA4XM. And top of the list, Bill, Palmyra, New York, N2BH. And his team member kind of keeps an eye on all the net controllers, does a wonderful job. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Roger, Vicky, everybody. Yes, I do use external speakers on most of my radios. N2BH. Have a good night.
You have a good evening too there, Bill. Thanks for joining us as always. And we got Micah, Florence, Alabama, AA4XM. Good evening, Micah. Do you use external speaker on your radios?
AA4XM here. Well, Roger, I actually do. In my truck, my radio, I have an external speaker that I wired up where it's actually kind of like installed, basically. I have a center console that has a speaker spot that was the factory from the truck, and I actually pulled it out and put the external for the radio in it. But other than that, I use headphones on my stuff at the house. And maybe sometimes Bluetooth with my handheld. Back to you, Roger. AA4XM.
Thanks, Micah. Always sound good, and hear you good on the 40-meter net. We got to get you a day off on Thursday morning so you can check in the 20-meter net. Have a good evening. This is KO4QMM. Let's move on to Mary, Easton, PA, KB3VPK. Good evening, Mary.
Good evening from Cold, Pennsylvania. I have an external speaker on my Kenwood HF gear. Came with the radio. And I have a little external speaker here on my HT sitting on the music stand. I took a picture of it and posted it at the Facebook page for the East Coast Reflector if you want to check it out. Back to you, KB3BPK. Stay warm, everybody.
Sound like you're always keeping busy, Mary. Keep enjoying, and thanks for joining us. Let's move on to Bill, Fayetteville, North Carolina, KE4DER. Good evening, Bill. Do you use an external speaker on any of your radios?
It's KE4DER in Fayetteville again. Thanks for taking my call. No, I do not use external speakers. I just set up this little kit here I'm talking to you on. I'm a member of the Cape Fear Amateur Radio Society here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and we have come up with an idea of making emergency kits, little radios with speakers and transmitters in them. And if we ever have an emergency in the area, then we take the radio to the emergency area, and they use for radio contacts. Just trying to see if it would work. It sounds like it's working good. I've got it hooked up in the house here with the coax running outside through my door to a 10-meter mobile antenna, because I don't have it set up with a other antenna yet. 73s, thanks for taking my call. KE4DER.
Well, you got it. Thanks for joining us this evening, and interesting. Let's move on to Ray Cody, Wyoming, KJ7RVB. Good evening.
Good. Bluetooth garage sale that still had an 1/8-inch jack, and I just run it off a tiny little Behringer mixer between my 6 or 7 rigs. Works great. KJ7RVB.
Thanks for joining us, Ray. You have a good evening. Let's move on to Ed, Hollandale, Florida, AK6CF. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening. Sorry for that poor transmission. Somehow I hit a up and down tuning button as I was transmitting earlier. Yes, I have speakers on all my devices. Years of flying, loud environments, airplanes, helicopters, I'm not left with any other choices. AK6CF, have a great evening.
Yes, you pretty much got to wear headsets from what I've seen on helicopters. Never rode in one, but seen them many times. Thanks, Ed. You have a wonderful evening. Bottom of the list again, Jason, Perry, Michigan, KE8JXL. Check out eastcoastreflector.com if you haven't already, Jason. And the question of the evening is, do you use an external speaker on your radios? Over.
EHAXL, Jason here. Yes, I do. I have my bass, and I usually have them in the vehicle. Currently, I do not have an external speaker, but I normally have external set up here in the mobile. That way I can better direct the sound towards the driver and not the other passengers. Seems to work out all right sometimes. KEJXL, back to net control.
Yeah, I got a F-150 crew cab truck, and I got the speaker right behind my head, like a grab handle for the passenger seat back there. So, yeah, man, it's good to have right there in your ear. That way you hear. Thanks, Jason. All right, that's the end of that list. I think we're getting, we'll do one more call out here, see who we get, and come with your call signs. In and outs or general check-ins, twice and slow.
K2AP, Kilo 2, Alpha Papa.
K680, Kilo 6, Alpha Delta Sierra.
Victor 44, November Yankee Zulu. Victor 44, November Yankee Zulu.
Mike, Whiskey Golf. Kilo, Mike 6, Mike, Whiskey Golf.
All right, we're getting down to the end of the thread here. If I didn't call your call sign, we'll get you back one more time. KM6MWG, Randy, Salinas, California. V4NYZ, Evan, St. Thomas Parish. K2AP, Joe, East Islip, New York. K6ADS, Andrew, Glen Burnie, Maryland. And we got N2ZWR, Daniel, Redford, Virginia. If I did call your call sign, come on back.
November 1 Delta Kilo Echo out of a frigid New Hampshire. November 1 Delta Kilo Echo.
All right, we got you, David. I knew there had to be one more there. N1DKE, David, Whitefield, New Hampshire, and the rest of them you already know. Let's go to the top of the list and clean it up. N2ZWR, Daniel, Redford, Virginia. Do you use an external speaker on your radios?
Good evening to everyone on the net. No, I haven't used an external speaker as yet. 73s, N2ZWR, back to net control.
You have a great evening there, Daniel, joining us. Let's move on to Andrew, Glen Burnie, Maryland. K6ADS. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Sorry for the delay there. External speakers, in some occasions, yes, and when I can, I use a speaker mic. But currently not. I would say 50% of the time, if I can, I'll definitely use it if I have it. Thanks. Back to net control.
You got it, Andrew. Have a great evening, and thanks for joining us. Let's move on to Joe, East Islip, New York, K2AP. Good evening, Joe.
Good evening to the net. This is Joe, K2AP, and it's balmy 7 degrees out here. And I had an external speaker on my radio. I had a CNC connected to it, and I needed to split the audio. But at last year's Hamvention, I bought an IC7300 to replace that, and it's just, I really enjoy not having one right now because I have more room on the desk. So that's the story over here. Good evening, everyone. K2AP, back to net.
Yes, and room has a lot to do with some of these speakers. There just ain't no room. Thanks for joining us, Joe. You have a wonderful evening. Let's move on to Evan, St. Thomas Parish, V4NYZ. Good evening, Evan.
Good evening, Net Control. Hope everything is going well for you. So I do not use an external speaker. And saying good night to everyone on the net. Back to you, Net Control.
All is well here, Evan. Hope all is well there, and you have a wonderful evening. Let's move on to Randy, Salinas, California, KM6MWG. Good evening, Randy. Do you use any external speakers on your radios? Over.
No, negative at this time. I'm not using any speakers. But anyway, thanks for asking. Stay well and stay out of those vehicle pileups. KM6MWG.
You got it, Randy. Thanks for joining us. You be safe out there. Let's, the end of the East Coast Reflector Tech Net night is David, Whitefield, New Hampshire, N1DKE. David, do you use an external speaker on your radios?
Hey there, I do use an external speaker on my 7300. However, I was frugal when I purchased it, and I didn't make a very good purchase. So believe it or not, with my little 705 sitting on top of my 7300, the sound coming out of the OEM speaker sounds better than the one I bought, so I plan on upgrading. Back to you, Net Control.
Oh, that's too funny. Must have been off that one of those Temu sites or something there. Thanks for joining us, David. Really appreciate it. And that's it. On behalf of Dick, WB2JPQ, and Vicky did some great logging as usual, K8VKY, and myself for doing some net controlling. Thanks everybody for joining us. This is the East Coast Reflector Tuesday night Tech Net. Going back to normal frequency amateur use. This is KO4QMM Roger Clear. 7-3.